Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. We've got a Tuesday afternoon edition with Brian Renick at brenick77 on Twitter. You may also know him from No Huddle on Odyssey Sports, but also he's an editor and writer for 49ers Web Zone. I've got that here, but I just need to put that into my banner so I can fly it. But Brian, thanks for joining today. Let everybody know anything I may have missed, anything you've got going on coming up. Anything you want to promote, anything like that, I'm here to help.
No, I think you nailed it. Still doing No Huddle with Zane and Al. We're part of the Odyssey Network now, which is super exciting. We were there last year, so continuing that partnership, and again, a editor and very, very occasional writer now at the Web Zone, doing more of the editing than anything. You can get No Huddle wherever you get your favorite podcast. And I think we're starting to dabble with putting up our shows on YouTube. We don't live stream, but I think David, the managing editor over at 49ers Web Zone, is starting to dabble with putting those episodes up after they release via podcast. So you can find those on YouTube at 49ers Web Zone. You can find 49ers Web Zone at 49erswebzone.com. And again, No Huddle Podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Nice. Well, I think Zane came on with me since the last time you were on. So thanks
awesome.
to Zane for that. We had a good time chopping things up. And now I'll just have to get Al to come on one of these days.
Yeah.
I was away last week. We did a family road trip down the California coast.
Nice.
We started out in Cambria and then saw the Hearst Castle there. And then 4th of July in Santa Barbara, my sister-in-law is redoing their house here in the Bay Area. And so they rented a house in Santa Barbara for a month while it's all torn up. And so we visited them some. And then we went to Ojai Valley Inn in Ojai, California, which I never been to before, but it's pretty cool. It's like you kind of go, you park your car, and you're there for 3 or 4 days, and you just relax and stay. Good food and
nice.
Golf, tennis, swimming, and my son loved the little shuttles, the little golf cart shuttles that take people around to the different places.
Man, so I don't know what it is. I'm 41 years old. I've had a driver's license for 26 years now, and I still love driving golf carts. It's like I don't think age really matters. They're just, for whatever reason, we love to drive little fun things around. So I get it.
No doubt.
Most definitely.
No doubt about it. Yeah. So real culk, just want to say Jimmy Prez here in the house saying, what's up, Ted and Brian?
What up, Jimmy?
Jimmy? Appreciate you being here. Bryant Culp in the house, giving us the 4 pineapples. I don't know if you know, but he's been replacing the fire emojis with pineapple emojis.
Okay.
Per George Kittle. And it's funny, just a random thing I saw on Twitter today. Somebody posted that Haribo, they have the gold bears, the gummy bears. Mm-hmm. And those are one of my favorites. And my favorite flavor is pineapple. And I saw that they make bags of just pure pineapple gummies. And so it's like funny, like my favorite gummies, pineapple.
Like
my
that's
favorite.
In your future.
Yeah, my favorite Niners, George Kittle. He had that pineapple video. It's like, I don't know what it is with these pineapples, but starting to learn to embrace it. I just don't put them on my pizza, though. That's the one thing.
Oh, okay. I do like a Hawaiian pizza. I will eat pineapple on my pizza. It's not my preference, but I'm not opposed to it. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I probably would never turn it down. It's just like you, it wouldn't be what I would order. Yeah, it's hard to imagine a pizza that I would actually say no to.
I will say this, and if you've never tried it, go to your favorite pizza place if you can. Hawaiian, right? Ham and pineapple, but instead of the red sauce, get like a white garlic sauce. It is phenomenal.
I'm a big fan of like that kind of Alfredo garlic cream sauce. Yeah, that's always rich food, and I have no problem with one another. So Brian Cuff's just saying what's up. Also, what's up, Brian? Everybody, make sure to check out his channel. He's smashed through 100 subs already. I think he's up to 150 now. Doing really well. Lots of fun. And he does the great coffee shows on the weekends, and then a lot of shows with other content creators and whatnot. So
awesome.
And he's sitting 100% there. So where should we kick off? I mean, it seems like the big news of the day is the Debo interview / non-interview. And I won't even mention the Eagles guy who because I don't think he really deserves any more credit than he's getting. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. There's some differing opinions on this. Some people feel like Debo, like, you should have known that that's what was, quid pro quo of the interview, that he would publicize Debo's endeavors, and then Debo needed to answer all the questions. Or some people are saying like, "Hey, good that we finally stopped talking about the NFC Championship game."
Yeah. So here's my stance on it, right? Like, if he had gone on in February, sure, maybe even March, right? Sure, you can ask those questions. It's July. We are 6 months removed from the NFC Championship game. We are 6 months removed from the comments that Debo made, right? And I don't blame him. I don't blame Debo for, like, I'm done talking about that, right? It's the time for talking is over, right? We're gonna face each other in about 5 months, and we're gonna let our play do the talking. I have no problem with it. And if that guy is upset, ask better questions. Torrey Smith quote tweeted it, said the same thing. Ask better questions, right? There's no need to ask that question anymore. It's over. It's done. We're 6 months removed, right? So no, I have no problem with what Debo did. And I don't think it's a quid pro quo. I think if an athlete agrees to come on, that's great. But if you aren't prepared to ask him questions that he is either A, willing to answer, or B, he thinks is worthwhile to answer, then that's on you as the interviewer. So kudos to Debo. And like I said, I'm just ready. I'm ready for that game. I think that's the game I'm looking most forward to at the of any game this season, is that Eagles game, because those fans and the media there are the worst. So I'm just ready.
Let's not mince words, right? Tell us how you really feel, Brian. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's like I've been saying for quite a while now that Seahawks are my most hated team. The Cowboys were a close second for a long time. I feel like the Eagles have really dethroned the Cowboys as my second most hated team, and maybe even starting to rival the Seahawks as just that most hated, especially after sweeping the Seahawks 3-0 last season.
Yeah.
That erased a lot of animosity towards them with me, and knowing that I don't think, I'm not going to say we'll sweep them again, but I don't think we'll be swept by them anytime soon.
No.
Not like the 17-4 record with Russ or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I saw that stuff pop up today, I quote tweeted it and I just said, "This is good. Stop talking. Save it for the gridiron." Because for a while, the Eagles fans are like, "Oh, the Niners fans are crying. They're crying." I'm like, well, our players are being asked these questions and they're answering the questions honestly. Mm-hmm. But I do think there is a point where you just have to stop answering the questions. You don't lie and change your answer if you still believe it, but just say, "Look, I'm asked and answered. Let's move on, and let's save it for the gridiron for sure." And then speaking of the Eagles, I saw there was another one today. There was I won't say the guy's name, but he said basically something to the effect of the 49ers have to be the most overrated, quote unquote, contender the NFL has ever had going into the season in a very long time. And of course, I gave it, the usual reply of like, "This will be fun to come back to." But then I decided I'd quote tweet it too, and I just said, "Who's going to tell them about the Super Bowl hangover?" Because I feel like Super Bowl hangover is pretty real, especially for Super Bowl losers. And they lost.
Yeah. I mean, look at 2020 for the 49ers. Now, you can't blame it all on a Super Bowl hangover, because there were some injuries that just weren't able to overcome, specifically to Jimmy Garoppolo. But it's not even that. It's this idea that, to me, where are they overrated? How are they overrated? You look at this team and they brought back everybody. They lost 0 impact starters. I mean, you could make an argument for Mike McGlinchey, and that's fair. And so to me, you're talking about a team where their only question mark is at right tackle, which they believe in Colton McKivitz, and were believe in him so much that they looked at trading Mike McGlinchey prior to last season. They didn't pull the trigger, but they believed in McKivitz enough to at least look into it. So again, that tells me all I need to know. Is he going to be an all-pro? Doubtful, but I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to give you, I think he's going to give you as much, if not a little bit more than McGlinchey did in the past game. And he might be a downgrade in the run game because Mike McGlinchey is an elite run blocker, but I don't think that is reason enough to all of a sudden downgrade this team or this offense in terms of their potential. Obviously, there are question marks at quarterback, but that doesn't mean that there isn't talent there, right? We know that there's talent there with Purdy. We believe that there's talent there with Trey Lance, and you've got Sam Darnold, who hasn't been great in his 55 games, but he hasn't had Kyle Shanahan for 55 games. So, and then on the defensive side of the ball, they added the best free agent available in Javon Hargrave, and also added a more than adequate replacement for Jimmy Ward in the slot in Isaiah Oliver, and drafted a guy that likely will end up playing probably a lot in terms of a free safety in Jair Brown. And so their defense didn't lose anybody that will make them take a step back. They lost their coordinator. We'll see how Steve Wilkes does. But again, like just on that level alone, to say that they're overrated when they made the NFC Championship game last season and are returning roughly the same team, but upgraded their defensive line, at least on the interior, it just is like asinine to think that they are overrated. It's just ridiculous to me. It's just that is lazy clickbait analysis, which is probably what he was doing, to be fair, but it's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the more I sit here and think about it, the more I'm thinking he's projecting, because it's the Eagles that are the overrated contender. As far as offense, they remained quite a bit intact. I mean, they lost Sumalu, right guard, but they had already drafted his replacement. They obviously lost Miles Sanders, who's a good back, but they got Swift from the Lions. So I don't know if that's a push, but it's close enough that I'm not going to split hairs. But on defense, they obviously have some huge issues, losing Javon Hargrave, who is one of their most impactful players on their D-line, along with Hassan Reddick and Fletcher Cox. But then, they lost all their linebackers, including TJ Edwards, who I just saw on the list was one of the top-rated linebackers in the league. But they lost all their starting linebackers. They lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I know that people like Jalen Carter, or at least the idea of him, and Nolan Smith, the defensive end. But these guys are rookies, and they could take a while to blossom, and they may never blossom. So even if they're from Georgia, which everybody they're Georgia. It's they're just rookies in the NFL. That's all they are in my mind.
Yeah.
So I mean,
they lost both their coordinators.
Yes, especially Steichen. Their OC.
I'm not. I don't think losing Gannon is that big a deal for them.
I don't seem to think so either.
I'm not a believer in Jonathan Gannon as a head coach, which I'm glad he's in the NFC West. But I'm also not a believer in him just as a defensive coordinator in general. But I think losing Shane Steichen is a big loss for them. And I mean, we'll see. We'll see if we'll see how that affects them. We'll see how it affects Jalen Hurts. But I don't think you can understate the importance that Steichen had in how that offense operated last year. And now he's gone. So yeah, for him to be a Philly sports, radio host and to claim that the 49ers are overrated when, they are easily one of the top 3 rosters in the NFC and one of the top 5 probably in the NFL, and along with the Eagles. I'm not disparaging the Eagles, But to claim that the 49ers are overrated is just, it's like I said, it's really lazy and really disingenuous, in my opinion.
More wishful thinking than probably based in anything in reality.
Good point.
A lot of keep in mind, a lot of the Philly fans think that final score of the NFC Championship game, they think like maybe that might have happened if Purdy had stayed healthy, right? I mean, I think a lot of them try to pretend that.
Sure.
They try to say like, oh, we whooped you guys, and where I'm just like, hey, look, our QB got hurt, and it's basically TBD which of these two teams is better. We'll see you week 13.
And that's
Afraid.
the beauty of it. And that's the beauty of all of this, is that week 13 will roll around. Now, no telling where both teams are in terms of injuries. I'm sure if they have a major injury, they'll use that as an excuse. I'm sure if 49ers have a major injury, 49er fans will use that as an excuse, depending on what the injury is. There are excuses, but too many people, especially on social media, on Twitter, they view context as a crutch, when in reality you cannot analyze situations outside of context. And so to analyze that NFC Championship game outside of the context of the fact that the 49ers did not have a player that could throw the ball downfield after Josh Johnson left, to discount that is, again, lazy. And it is, again, the nature of social media analysis. But, context is real, and context does matter. And that's really, I think, sometimes where we lose out in the Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, debate, is context, right? Some people push Purdy and don't use context, like having Christian McCaffrey, who was the actual catalyst in the 49ers offensive renaissance, right? They don't talk about the context of Trey Lance playing 4.5 quarters last year, and trying to then say, well, obviously Purdy is better than Lance. And it's like, well, Purdy got 8 games. If we gave Trey 8 games, I would like to see what that would look like based on what we invested in him. And that's really, I tweeted out something that has gotten quite a bit of engagement yesterday, and even today, about that idea of, Greg Cosell, somebody, I think it was Sterling Bennett of 95.7 The Game, had tweeted some, it was Ross Tucker. Ross Tucker retweeted a tweet from about 5 days ago where he had Greg Cosell on his podcast, and basically what it said was that Greg Cosell doesn't think that the 49ers have soured on Trey Lance. He just thinks that they are in a win now, this amorphous win now roster. And they
hasn't won a Super Bowl,
and they don't have, they quote unquote don't have time, or don't have the patience to deal with growing pains. And
we can't take a break from all these Super Bowls we've been winning, Brian. That's the trick. So,
right.
We just got to keep stacking them like we have been. And that's really the only way to do it.
And that's where, like, to me as a fan, I get frustrated, because it's like, you are the decision makers that decided to draft a quarterback as raw as Trey Lance. You are the decision makers that traded all that you traded to move up to 3, and you eventually chose Lance. Now, obviously there's a reason for that. And, I got pushback saying, yeah, well, they didn't have Purdy at that time. And it's like, yeah, but we've only seen 8 games with Purdy. Was he great in those games? Sure. I loved Brock Purdy. I am a huge Brock Purdy fan, and perhaps he is the future. That's fine with me. But I don't think that you just lean into Brock Purdy as the future without still seeing what you have in Trey Lance. And everything that has come out has made it seem like there isn't an actual competition between Purdy, Lance, and Darnold, or Purdy and Lance, right? We've heard it that there is between Lance and Darnold, but I don't think 8 games of admittedly great play and 2 playoff wins in which he played better in those 2 playoff games than Jimmy Garoppolo ever did, ever. I don't think that's enough to still not try and see what you have in Trey Lance. So if Kyle Shanahan has an open mind about QB1, if it is a true competition, that's all that Trey can ask for. And for me, that's all that I would want as a fan, is for Kyle Shanahan to have an open mind about QB1. And if Lance does enough to show, hey, there is this extra element that he brings that Brock Purdy doesn't, and he shows growth, then by all means, I think he should have a shot like Brock Purdy got a shot. And, you know, if he shits the bed, then you know, right? And you can move forward. But I'm hard pressed to just hand the reins to Purdy, you know, not give Lance a chance, and then never really know what you have. Because to me, the easiest way to maintain your contender status in the NFL as a Super Bowl contender is to have a franchise quarterback. And is Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback? I don't know. Is Trey Lance a franchise quarterback? I don't know. But it seems like we're more than willing to just lean into the I don't know of Brock Purdy rather than Trey Lance. And it just seems short-sighted to me. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's not, it has nothing to do with my lack of faith in Brock Purdy, and everything to do with, if you've got 2 unknowns, you've got to give both of them an opportunity. That's just where I'm at, especially when you invested what you invested to get Trey Lance.
And especially when Purdy is coming off a devastating injury to his UCL,
yes,
that has had a surgery to the UCL repair plus internal brace, that literally only one other NFL quarterback has ever had. That quarterback's name, oddly enough, Nick Mullins.
Yep.
It happened to us December 20th of 2020 in Dallas, when DeMarcus Lawrence beat McGlinchey off the right edge and hit Mullins in a very similar way to the way Hassan Reddick hit Purdy. And then, and so everybody's like, oh, well, he's going to be ready in 6. He's on schedule. I'm like, what schedule? Like the schedule is like based off Mullins, and Mullins didn't play for a year. He literally did not play from December 20th, 2020 till December 21st in a regular season game. He may have played some preseason, but in a regular season game, he didn't play for a full year. He played 1 game for the Browns against the Raiders, lost through like 157 yards and lost. And if you can excuse low yardage if you win the game, but if you throw low yardage and lose, then, I'm saying that's a bad game. And then we haven't seen a game since. So yeah, there's a lot of things. You mentioned Trey Lance only had 5 quarters, or let's just call it 5 quarters to start the 2022 season. And and it's not just the lack of play, but it's also when the quarters occurred. They occurred when our team went 3-4 to start 2022, and 2 of his starts were or I guess 1 against the Cards was when we started 3-5 to start 2021.
And he was still suffering from that finger injury he got in the preseason.
The avulsion fracture of his index finger in his throwing hand. Exactly. And then we talk about no CMC. He's an absolute difference maker. The Lance haters love to just get out there and trash on CMC and say, oh, well, why do you need a running back? It's like, he's not a running back. He is the running back. He is easily, arguably, the best running back in the NFL, not as a pure runner, but when you count his receiving skills, he's just heads and tails.
He's not a running back. He's a playmaker, like Debo.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A lot like Debo. Exactly. Just with a better attitude and a better work ethic, I'd say. But yeah, no doubt about it. Let me just real quick say hi to 187 in the house. He was saying Debo's a dog. We also have third string all pro in the house. Love that name. Purdy to Debo all season. Definitely would love to see that. No doubt about it. And I'm just like Brian. Well, or maybe I'm even more of a Lance fan than Brian is, but I like both quarterbacks. I just feel like the potential of Lance, we got to see what we have. And I do feel like if he can reach it or come close, he's going to be the better QB. So why would you let some other team figure that out is my thing.
Right.
When QB's been holding us back this whole time, in my opinion. We've had the D, we've had the run game, we got Kyle. Now we have the best group of weapons in the NFL. Like, we just need the cherry on top of a good QB to pull it all together, I think. So 187, let's say a few things. You're saying BP Dog. You're saying QB1. Got Bottom Line Sports in the house saying, hey, guys, just jumped on. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here. 187 says Trey will get reps in preseason. Yeah, but it's so limited. You know, we need to see him in some full games. Preseason is just not the same. You don't have rarely do you have like defensive stars on the field. Rarely do you have your offensive stars on the field. It's really just not quite the same, and it's so small of doses usually. I think we'll see a lot of Darnold in the preseason is what I think we'll see a lot of, honestly. All my sports says, shouldn't the 49ers just call Trey Lance a bust? It happens. You want to go with this one first, Brian? Or?
I in the NFL, you cannot determine that a player is a bust with the amount of playing time that Trey Lance has received. That is both on Trey Lance, in so much as he has gotten injured. Not that those are his fault, because they're not. And the 49ers, who, you know, it was obvious that they had a plan. Their plan was to sit him for a year. It was the Patrick Mahomes plan, right? Sit him for a year behind a guy that we know that we're comfortable with and we can win with. And then, you know, hand him the reins in year 2. And they did that. And then he got injured in the first quarter of the second game. And that was it. And now people keep saying like they were, and that was the other thing was, you know, people keep arguing, well, they were willing to go with the, you know, they were willing to go with the growing pains last year. Things are different now. And my question is, well, how are things different now? We're talking about 1 year. We're talking about 1 year. And then people say, well, Brock Purdy is the difference. And again, I say 8 games is not enough. 8 games is not enough to say, well, Brock Purdy emerged and he stole the spotlight and made the most of it, and now it's his job. 8 games is not enough. I'm old enough to remember when they fell in love with a quarterback after 5 games, made him briefly the highest paid player ever at the position, and then 2 years later, we're ready to move on from him. So again, and the offseason stuff, the offseason stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is, what do you get in this player from this player in games? You don't know what you have from a player, especially a quarterback, until you know what you have from them when the bullets are flying, when it's a live game, when it matters. Preseason doesn't matter. None of that matters. So you cannot call him a bust because you still don't know what you have in him. Now, if you give him 4 games to start the season and he still isn't doing what you need him to do, the offense isn't running smoothly, you're not scoring points, whatever the case may be, then we can start to have that conversation. But you can't call a player who's still just 23 years old and has played 3.5 games in the NFL a bust. You just can't, no matter what the position is. You cannot call that person a bust. Just like you cannot call Purdy the future after 8 games. There's such thing as sample size to be able to know what you have in a player. And the people that talk in absolutes about Purdy and about Lance just miss me with those absolutes, because there's quite literally no way for you to know what you're talking about when you talk about absolutes like bust or future or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just real quick one. I'm lockstep with you on all that, Brian. 100%. Real quick, just want to call Joseph Mahoney in the house. He's saying traded Gray all season. We got Ryan from No Border Sports. He's been super helpful to me, helping me to, with better titles, better thumbnails, just he's helping a lot of folks
Awesome.
with his knowledge he's learned on growing his channel. So super appreciative to anyone who is free and easy with that kind of knowledge instead of hoarding it. It's really refreshing. Twin Empire in the house. He said Kyle said it doesn't matter unless you do it in a game. 187 said Sam's coming for QB1 also LOL. I think he's joking with the LOL. Purdy, Trey better be ready. I think that's tongue in cheek. I mean, I think, Sam, I'm comfortable saying 6 Cent Sammy is the best third string QB in the NFL for sure. Anything beyond that, you start to lose me about him taking Lance or Purdy's job if they're healthy. Bottom Line Sports says he's had several. So Lance has had several offseason. If he was anything close to being the guy, they would have just made him starter. Well, Bottom Line Sports,
they made him the starter last year, and then he got
starter
hurt.
week 1. Yeah, he got hurt. He lost his job due to injury. Then they brought in Jimmy. He lost his job due to injury. Then they brought in Purdy. He had a great little run, 8-0. But keep in mind, 8-1, 8-0 run and 8-1 overall, because you got to hang the Eagles loss on his record.
Which
sadly.
is unfair, but
because he couldn't play for most of it. Or I mean, he tried to play one armed. Right. But as far as the thing about Purdy is he came in when Jimmy G had just been 4-0 with CMC as a starter. So it's not like he came into a struggling team and all of a sudden turned it around and went 8-0. It's like he came into a team that was 4-0. And like Brian said, CMC was the catalyst. Healthy George Kittle is the catalyst. Deebo Samuel is a catalyst. Brandon Ayuk. These are some of the best weapons in the NFL. You put them all together as a group, with Juszczyk and Jennings. This is the best group of weapons in the NFL. And I've been saying that since we got CMC, basically week 8 against the Rams. It's basically when I started TED Talks Ball last season. Also want to call out David Corona in the house. He's saying, what up, everyone? Ryan says, I don't know if the plan was to sit him. Yeah, I mean, there was some talk that maybe, yeah, they did. But some people thought maybe they might start Lance in 2021 if he hadn't hurt his finger in that last preseason game. But it didn't really make sense because he was playing later and Jimmy G was playing the early reps in the preseason games, which usually is a starter. So I'm comfortable saying that they had planned to redshirt him. But I guess, unless you're there, you never know. So Terradome in the house. Also, I like to say Terradome is the most respectful Purdy fan out there. He doesn't really bash Lance. So they started him. Isn't that a chance? That is a chance. But like I said, it's just not a chance to see what he would do with similar weapons as to what Purdy had.
That's the thing is you're evaluating Brock Purdy based on his performance in an offense that added Christian McCaffrey. You have not evaluated Trey Lance in an offense that has Christian McCaffrey. You have not evaluated Trey Lance in an offense that had George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk on the field at the same time, outside of that week 1 game against the Bears in a monsoon. So again, I'm not saying that Trey is better than Brock. All I'm saying is, as a fan of a team who traded 3 first-round picks to move up to draft a quarterback, I really want my team to give that quarterback more evaluation before they move on from him for a 7th-round rookie that had a stretch of impressive football in the last 9 games that he played, right? If you include the Eagles game.
No doubt.
So that's all I'm saying. Again, my argument is not Trey Lance is better than Brock Purdy. My argument is I want my team who traded 3 first-round picks to actually see what they have in the quarterback that they selected when they traded those first-round picks. And to me, I've gone now almost 30 years without a Super Bowl victory. Okay. If we don't win the Super Bowl in 2023, but we were able to finally determine Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, that is fine to me. And it's fine to me because this is a quarterback driven league. You need a quarterback. The 49ers lost the Super Bowl in the 2019 season because they didn't have the quarterback that could get them there, right? They got to the Super Bowl, but if you remember, Jimmy Garoppolo was not the reason they won in the playoff. He was the reason that they won a handful of games in the regular season. I will give him that Cardinals game. I will give him that Saints game. He played really well, not saying that he didn't. But on the biggest stage, he shit the bed. And he did that every time in the playoffs. So, yes, he was good, but he was not the franchise. Now you have Brock Purdy, won 2 games in the playoffs. Awesome. Better than Jimmy Garoppolo had ever been in a single play in any playoff game that Jimmy Garoppolo was in. Again, awesome. But it's still 8 games. And I want to know in more than 3.5 games what I have in the guy that they traded 3 first-round picks for. It is more about value and long-term sustainability than it is about wanting to win a Super Bowl in 2023. Now, I know that is not the priority of Kyle Shanahan. That's not the priority of of the players. They want to win now. I get that. But if you're Kyle Shanahan and you have Fort Knox level job security, don't you want to know what you have in the guy that you handpicked? Don't you want to know that? Don't you want to know, hey, this is the guy, whether it's Purdy or Lance? Don't you want to be certain so that you can just move forward and be like, all right, now we're on our stretch of we are contenders every year because we have a dude at quarterback. Because eventually, whether it be Lance or Purdy, you are going to have to sign that quarterback to a relatively hefty contract. You are not going to be able to put together the type of team that you currently have. So you are going to need a quarterback that can elevate a roster that is not as good as the roster that you currently have. And is that Purdy? I don't know. Is that Trey? I don't know. Based on just simply their physical skill sets, you would think that Trey has a better opportunity to be a Mahomes type of player that elevates his team than Purdy, but it doesn't mean that Purdy can't. I just want to know. That's all I'm saying. I just want to know. And if Trey doesn't get an actual opportunity to show that, right, in a legitimate competition, then I think that is short-sighted on Kyle Shanahan's part. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Twin Empire had a good comment here. He said, remember Mark Bulger of the Rams, as far as, I believe, a fast start who fizzled out. There's countless stories of people who started out fast. And obviously, like you said, Jimmy G for us. There was also somebody was saying BP took the job for now. Well, 187 for now, Brock Purdy hasn't been physically cleared to play football yet. So, and then once he's physically cleared to play football, then Brock Purdy will need to sort of clear some mental hurdles before he's what I would call ready to play. I mean, first he'll have to trust his arm to rip it 100%. Rip it is probably a little bit kind for Brock Purdy. He didn't really exactly have a super strong arm to begin with. He'll need to trust his weapons and reestablish timing with his weapons. And then he'll also need to trust that he can get hit and stand in the pocket to wait for his weapons to uncover and still take a hit and still get up and throw again after. And so those are 3 mental hurdles, in my opinion, that he'll have to go through once he's been physically cleared to play. And he hasn't been physically cleared to play yet. So that's still TBD. We don't know when he'll be ready to play. And there's just not much data on NFL QBs with this surgery. So it's really hard to say it'll be week 1, even if he's quote unquote on schedule. I've talked to 2 separate doctors. Dr. Jesse Morse, the fantasy doctor, he had some doubts about week 1. That was a while back. He's going to come on again here soon. But I've had Dr. Pandya on several times, and most recently I pinned him down, and he said he thought week 3 would be the soonest that we would see Brock Purdy start a football game for the 49ers. So to say anyone is QB1 right now, I think is a fallacy. I think that until Purdy is cleared to play, then Darnold and Lance are competing for QB1, if you want to be honest about it. And we can't consider Purdy until he's shown that he's back. And when he is, and I also have to be honest, he may never be what he was in 2022 again. Whether it's regression, whether it's DC's catching up to him, whether it's the arm, whether it's the mentals around the arm, physically the arm, the mentals around the arm. There's a lot of different things that could keep Purdy from ever being what he was. And so that's why I'd like to see more of it before I just crown him. I really like him, love the story. I'm glad we have both. I think we'll probably need both. Hell, I mean, none of our 4 QBs has ever played a full NFL season. So, to think that whoever starts is just going to go in there and play the whole season is probably not that realistic. But what I don't want to have happen is Purdy to come in and play well, and then Kyle say, all right, we're going to trade Lance away, where we bought super high, sell super low, and then he goes and he hits the ceiling with another team, and it's something Kyle will never live down. As a coach and as fans, we'll never hear the end of. And honestly, I think we'll be around a lot longer than Kyle if something like that were to happen. So that's my bigger concern. But I have some new people in the chat, too. Just want to call it 49ers Jeff in the house. He's saying injuries suck, man. Bottom Line Sports was still chiming in. One game at the end of 2020. Yeah, we're not saying that Lance is Mahomes. He probably will never be Mahomes, but he has the tools to be that kind of a great quarterback. He's tall. He's got a big arm. He's smart. He's hardworking. He seems to have the right attitude. There may not ever be another Patrick Mahomes, but he could be in that top 5 to 10 range, which is what I think you need to consistently win, like Brian was talking about, to be a contender year in, year out, even when you're paying a guy, what is it now, 45, 50 mil a year? I guess we're more up 51, 52 mil a year for these top-notch quarterbacks, and we still haven't seen, Herbert or who else are we waiting for? Burrow, right? They both could break that number by quite a bit, so we'll see.
Yeah. I also want to. I saw a comment in here. From Terror Dome or Terror Dome. I don't know.
Yeah, Terror Dome.
When he said Brock's mental, like coming in week 13 cold versus Miami and balling. That's not what we're saying. The strength of Brock Purdy's game is his. I would argue is his unflappability. Right, like he came into that game. There was no situation that was too big for Brock Purdy. I think that's part of the strength of his game. And I think a lot of that comes from something that he has over Trey Lance, and that is experience at the college level, at the D1 level. What Ted is saying is when you come back from injury, there is a mental hurdle to overcome when it comes to being in the pocket, being afraid. I mean, look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo was never the same after his knee injury. Never the same. Never the same in the pocket. Never as confident as he was prior to that injury. He was never as
mobile.
Right. And now we're talking a knee injury versus an elbow injury. And that elbow injury occurred on a sack, right? So is he going to be skittish in the pocket? Is he going to be skittish is he going to allow pressure to move him off his spot or move him off his game because he's afraid that his arm is going to get hit again? Does he have enough trust in his arm, to sling it out there? Like, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, his mental toughness in regards to playing the quarterback position. We're just simply talking about the mental hurdles that you have to overcome when you come back from an injury, especially one as severe as what he had.
No doubt about it. Just real quick, I want to call out Collie Young. He runs a great chat group with a lot of great content creators in there. I always love his opinions. He never gives me a pass, always tough on me, and I appreciate that. Tough but fair, I would say. Cinnamon Kiss in the house, too. She's saying, John, an excellent point. Purdy will hustle like hell to be week 1 starter to keep his job.
Is that good? Is that good?
Yeah. We don't want to rush him.
Good. You know what I mean? Like, what if he rushes back, his arm is not ready, and then, he 3 games in and he's on IR or designated return because of, arm fatigue or tenderness in the elbow. Like, I don't want him to rush back. That's the thing. Like, going into this offseason, my initial thought was, hey, this is great, right? Like, Purdy is going to have the time to fully recover because he doesn't have to rush back, because they can start Trey. And now you kill two birds with one stone. You get to evaluate him again, and you don't have to rush Purdy back. And if he starts on the PUP list and he misses the first 4 games, and Trey Lance gets those 4 games, and Trey Lance doesn't perform, then now you've got an actual healthy, not rushed back Purdy that you can have even more faith in than a Purdy that rushed back. So that's the other thing, is I would much rather have Purdy start the season on PUP so that he doesn't rush back, and that he doesn't, or that they don't put him in position to where, his injury becomes an issue again. So that's the other thing where I'm like, they're talking about him being ready for camp or him being ready for week 1. And I just feel like that is short-sighted in itself, because you're not taking into account the player and their long-term health, especially for a quarterback that just had surgery on his throwing elbow.
No doubt about it. Joseph Mahoney said something about that too. Hurt his arm and pull a Chris Borland and retire. That's possible. I also want to be clear. Joseph said something. Brock will never be the same. I didn't say that. I said we have to be prepared that he may never be the same. But I do think that Brock will eventually be the same as he was physically in 2022. The mentally side can be more difficult sometimes. It's just more of a timing thing for me. Will it be week 1? Will it be week 4? Go on IR and come back, or like Brian was saying, week 6, go on PUP and come back. Those are the big variables. Will it even happen in 2023 at all? It might take a full year for him to come back and be ready. So we'll see. So the chat is hopping.
And yes, to reply to Taradome, will Trey's mental hurdle affect him too? Like Brock, he too is coming back from season. Absolutely. I'm not saying it won't. Again, I'm not saying that Trey is better than Brock or Brock is better than Trey. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want Trey to get a legitimate opportunity, and his injury happened almost a year ago. He's had more time to recover. But yeah, he'll have mental hurdles to overcome as well, especially when running the ball, right? Because that's when he was injured, was running the ball. So again, I'm not saying that. We're not saying that Trey should start because Brock has to overcome mental hurdles and Trey doesn't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying use this opportunity to get a more complete evaluation of the player that you traded 3 first-round picks for before just giving it to the guy that had 8 great games. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Teradome says, if 2022 wasn't so special, why y'all saying it'll never be that again? Look, 2022 was special from a wins-loss perspective. To win 8 straight games was special. But I'm not a huge QB wins guy. I mean, I'm a big believer, like if you got the best group of weapons, a solid O-line, the number 1 D, and Kyle calling the plays, you should win a lot of games with that setup that Purdy had. So I'm just saying that whatever it was, it may not be that again. And we'll see. I mean, I think Purdy is I've got him like top 15 range, maybe as much as top 12. I don't think he's top 10 as a quarterback. And I got Jimmy a little bit higher, more like in the 15 to 20, even 22 range is sort of where I see Jimmy Garoppolo. But yeah, I mean, regardless of whatever his level is, he may not ever get back to that level again. And I just think there are a lot of quarterbacks, if you stick him in that situation, they could have done more than what Purdy did. And I'll just say that, even though, yeah, he had the 33 points, but there were a lot of balls that he threw that could have been intercepted, that were dropped. And, part of it too is our defense was turning our opponents over 2.4 times a game for Purdy, only 1.2 times a game for Jimmy G. I saw Teradome say it was an 8-point difference. It was a 7-point difference between Purdy's average and Jimmy G's average when he had CMC as a starter. A lot of that gets evaporated when you add in 1.2 more turnovers per game for Jimmy. You're probably going to get at least 3 or 4 more points a game, I would say, maybe at least half of that delta. And, some of it was Purdy played some bad and or banged up defenses. One of the best defenses that he played was the Bucks, and they were missing both safeties, one of their three corners, and Vita Vea went down really early in the game, one of the most dominant defensive tackles in all of football. So if they were a top 10 or number 10 in the league overall, they certainly weren't that when they played us that day. So that's the other thing you got to keep in mind when we're looking at all this stuff. 107 says Trey could be. Oh, we saw that about the injury. Yeah, I mean, injuries are a concern for all our QBs. Let's be honest. If Trey played like Purdy, would sample size be? Would y'all be this skeptical? There's 4 games. Yes. Small sample size leads to distortions fairly often, so good or bad. So I'm not calling Trey a bust after 4 games, and I'm not crowning Purdy after 8 games either. Both you need to see more for sure. Collie was saying, I think Brock is more mentally tougher than Jimmy coming back from injury. Probably. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair statement to make. I hope so. I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, time will tell, as a wise man said. Yeah. This is exactly it. The strength of schedule was not that great for what Purdy looked at, saw, and when he played the tougher Ds, Dallas and Philly, started to look a little more shaky. Let's just say. I mean,
we can't really use Philly as an example because that was
it was like 5 plays, 1 series, right? Okay, but with Cowboys, I could say that if Pollard doesn't go down, or if Diggs intercepts that ball that hit him in the breadbasket, either one of those 2 things could have changed that game. I'm not saying we would have lost. I'm just saying we might not have won.
But also, you had to expect him to struggle against Dallas in that game because he was a rookie playing his second playoff game against arguably the second best defense in the NFL behind San Francisco. Look at what San Francisco does to quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, right? So a good defense should, and oftentimes does, minimize a quarterback's play. So I don't want to not praise Purdy for his performance in that game, because ultimately the one thing that you need and want him to do is not turn the ball over, and he didn't. Now, did he throw some balls that could have been turnovers? Yes, but they weren't. And so the other quarterback was the one with the back-breaking turnovers that ended up turning that game. So again, I'm not taking anything away from what Brock Purdy did last season. It was really, really impressive. And that game in Seattle is one I think is an iconic moment for him. I will never forget at the end of that game when he scrambled out to his right and then stuck that ball right over the first down marker as he was going out of bounds to ice that game. Like, again, the mental game that Brock Purdy has is top notch, and that might be enough to make him a career top 10 to 15 quarterback. But again, with the way that quarterbacks get paid in this league, a top 10 to 15 quarterback might not be enough to win a Super Bowl, because you're paying them disproportionately, and you are no longer able to field teams like they currently have, which is why there is a part of me that thinks like that. I don't want to say I genuinely think this, but I've had this thought on multiple occasions. Maybe the market inefficiency, right, in this league is to have a talented play caller like Kyle Shanahan and a scheme that is quote unquote quarterback proof, to where you can moneyball the quarterback position. I mean, it's risky, but that's essentially what they've done here the past 2 seasons. And they will continue to do as long as they have Brock Purdy and Trey Lance on rookie contracts. But maybe this whole thing is Kyle Shanahan saying, listen, I just need a guy like Brock Purdy to run the offense the way that I want it run, right? To be an extension of me on the field, so that I can mash my A, B, C, my triangle and my X, right, on my controller, and he'll throw it there. But at the same time, that hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. And so Kyle Shanahan talked about wanting a quarterback that can make him right when he is wrong, meaning that when Kyle Shanahan calls a play that breaks down, do I have a quarterback that can salvage that play? Because he's not going to always be perfect. And while Brock Purdy has some wiggle and escapability to his game, I don't know that he has the capacity to make Kyle Shanahan right when he's wrong. And that's why you go and get a guy like Trey Lance. That's why you go and get a guy like Justin Herbert or like Patrick Mahomes or like Josh Allen or like Joe Burrow, right? Guys that can make you right when you're wrong. I don't know that Brock Purdy can do that. I'm not saying he can't. I just don't know that he can. So again, I want to evaluate the guy that I thought already could in more than 3.5 games. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And like, let's figure it out. Let's see what we got. I mean, put it this way, Purdy fans, talk to me here, folks. Like, if Purdy's so great, why are you all so scared of a competition? Like, you should want it. Trey wants it because he knows that if he wins a competition, that's probably the only way he can really win the locker room is by winning a competition. So that's why he wants it. And Purdy should want it too. We should all want to know who the best quarterback is. We haven't seen Lance with his new mechanics. We haven't seen him with CMC. We've barely seen him with Kittle, only a little bit with Kittle. And when we did see him with Kittle, he had a 124 passer rating when George Kittle was on the field. And then, we've also barely seen Lance when the team wasn't struggling. So these things are all things that we need to explore and find out the answers to. And if it turns out Purdy's the best, then, good, great. I mean, like Brian said, he's got all the intangibles. The problem is his tangibles, there's some limitations. He's got a limited arm, he's got limited height, and he has limited top speed. And that arm and top speed really show up in that, if you can launch the ball deep, it keeps the safety back out of the box. If you can run fast, Purdy's quicker, clearly, but if you can run fast like Trey Lance, you make a defender spy you. And so that's basically two defenders you're taking out of the play that don't have eyes on Debo, CMC, Kittle, Ayuk, or anybody else that you're throwing the ball to. And it just makes their job so much easier, gives them more space to run, it gets them more open, easier catches, more yak, more scoring, all that good stuff. So
football.
That's exactly it. So if you have two QBs, you have no QBs. Yeah, I mean, at some point, if you decide on one QB, you probably have to ship the other one out at some point. But we're a long way from there just yet. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I kept asking myself this question. How many teams in the NFL right now would trade for, either one of these quarterbacks, right? But would trade for Brock Purdy after those 8 games? I don't know that anyone would. I don't know that anyone would trade for Trey Lance because he's coming off an injury and they haven't seen enough, right? 3.5 games or whatever. But you keep looking at the quarterbacks that are getting drafted by teams, especially high. And they have more in common with what Trey Lance has than they have with what Brock Purdy has. Now, I've always said that Trey Lance is the more physically gifted player, right? So he reminds you more of those really physically gifted quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I'm not going to say Lamar Jackson because he has a fraction of the speed of Lamar Jackson. No one is as physically gifted as Lamar Jackson. Maybe Anthony Richardson, but that's he's a rookie. But to me, Brock Purdy is a slightly, or maybe just a less gifted and shorter Joe Burrow, right? And Joe Burrow is great. I'm not saying that he's not. But do you want a shorter Joe Burrow with less arm, or do you want to see if you have your version of Josh Allen, your version of Justin Herbert, your version of Patrick Mahomes, whatever, right? Again, this is not an argument that I think that Trey Lance is those. I think Trey Lance has the potential. I want to see in a larger sample size whether or not he could get there. And that's where, again, my hope is that he gets 4 games in the regular season, maybe the 4 games to start the season, right? Just to have more of an evaluation. And like I said, in those 4 games, if they go 2-2, if they go 1-3, right? Then you've got Brock Purdy coming off injury to come in and do what he needs to do. And now you've answered the question. And does it put you in more of a hole to win a Super Bowl in 2023? Sure, right? Especially if you go 1-3, right? If you start 1-3, chances are you're not getting home field, right? So you're going to have to go somewhere for the NFC Championship game. And I know that the preference is not to have to do that, but like I said, we're talking more long term than short term. And I know, they say the NFL not for long, whatever the case may be. But again, Kyle Shanahan is not going anywhere unless he chooses to go somewhere. So take advantage of that and evaluate the 2 guys that you think are your guy, and then make a decision. And now you don't have to worry about it anymore. And if you don't, there's always going to be that what if, right? Like, what if we gave Trey another shot, and now that he's a superstar in Tennessee, like, we get to see what it could have been. And if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I don't want that. I want to be steadfast in my decision based on enough data, not limited data.
There you go. Now that makes sense. Terradome, this must pain him to say this because he's a Lakers fan. So he was comparing Purdy to Steph Curry, which is pretty comical when we're talking about Purdy maybe lacking a little bit in the deep ball. And, Curry is the greatest deep shooter of all time and all of NBA history. So I think it's a little bit of a flawed comparison, but nonetheless, I like it. Anything having to do with Steph Curry, I'm going to enjoy.
And Steph Curry is the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. How does that translate to the quarterback position? What would Brock have to be the best of all time at in order to make that comparison?
Long bombs. Not dinking
arguably,
and
dunking,
right? And I hate to bring that one up because while I agree with Ryan Hensley on a lot of the stuff he said with Larry Krueger, I wouldn't call Purdy dink and dunk because he does throw good intermediate balls. But I did say limited arm strength. And we saw it on the Raiders game. We saw when he tried to roll left and throw back right to Kittle, and it got intercepted. And he tried to do the same thing to Jennings, and it was a PBU. So, anyway, I love it though, Terradome. It's a good try, but I'm calling no joy on the Curry comparison. Laura Cat in the house. She was saying, "Welcome back from vacay." Thanks, Laura Cat. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Good to see everybody here. We got a great turnout. Also, I'll come back to bottom line, but I want to call out Salty Cyclist here. He says Trey will start week 1. I think that's pretty likely. I've been saying that for a while, that I thought that. We'll see. Terradome says processing. What was this one? The average QBR for an NFL QB is 50. Top 10 is like 65. Purdy had a 65 and Lance had a 35. Yeah, but QBR is a lot wrapped up in running, and Kyle ran Lance up the middle a lot. It was highly ineffective, where he just got stuffed, and that brought his QBR down. So I think for Lance, the passer rating is a better number of what we're looking for.
But also Trey Lance has a 35 QBR in 3.5 games. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's
without CMC, with only one game of Kittle, when the team was struggling. All the same stuff just keeps coming up again and again. It's funny how that works. Bryant Colt says, NFL career is 3 or 4 years here soon. Won't have any of these guys. We got to figure it out ASAP. Yeah, there's definitely some urgency, especially as we start to look at paying Nick Bosa. We're going to start to see some of our depth of our core players dwindle some. We won't be able to pay all these players top of their skill set like we have with Fred, Kittle, Juice, Trent Williams. Who am I missing? Debo. Debo's not quite top of the wide receiver, but he's top of the wide back market. So, what else? So, Teardown saying playmaking, poise, Kyle Young, leadership. Yeah, these are all great things. Command of the huddle. But guess what? All these things can be learned, folks. Purdy's not going to learn to be 6'4" or learn to have a cannon of an arm. And I'm not saying that Lance will learn them. I'm just saying it's possible.
And also
and
that's not the be all. That's not the be all end all of being a quarterback. Again, we're not saying that. What we're saying is evaluate, or at least what I'm saying is evaluate what you have in Trey Lance before crowning Brock Purdy. And if that means, again, that Purdy starts in pup for the season and misses the first 4 games and Lance ends up being QB1 and you give him those 4 games, to me, those 4 games plus the 3.5 games that you've had, plus the 2 years in the building that you've had, that to me is enough to finally say, like, yeah, we're going to move forward with Trey, or yeah, we're going to move forward with Brock. And whatever decision is made there, that's fine. But I just don't want them making a decision about the position without knowing what they have in the guy that they gave up 3 first-round picks for. Because, like I said before, eventually you're going to have to pay one of them. And the lack of first-round picks the last 2 seasons is going to hurt the team when you have to pay the quarterback, right? Because they weren't able to restock the roster with first-round talent because they gave it up for a quarterback that they still don't know what they have in. And to eat that based on the 8 games that Brock Purdy played and not giving Trey Lance at least another opportunity. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that they hand it to Trey Lance. If he gets outplayed in camp in the preseason by Sam Darnold, that's an answer in and of itself. So we do have that. But like I said, all I'm asking is for Kyle Shanahan to not have a closed mindset when it is his QB1. Let it play out between the 3 of them. Sure. I don't care. I don't care if Sam Darnold's a part of it, but don't go into this thinking Brock is my QB1 and I'm not even willing to ascertain any other idea that maybe Lance could be, or maybe even Darnold could be. But I think 55 games in the NFL is a fair amount of time to evaluate a player, which is what Darnold has had. But 3.5
Jimmy's right around there. Jimmy's right around that ballpark too. Yeah, no, 100%. And it's just funny. A lot of the Lance haters like to say, "Well, you can just tell in practice." I'm like, you can't tell when you're not tackling quarterbacks. And if you could tell so much in practice, then why was Brock Purdy QB3 to start last season? Like, all these guys love Purdy now, and it's like, okay, then why was he QB3 if practice is such a good evaluator of QB talent? Then why did 2 quarterbacks have to get hurt before Purdy? If we all agree that Purdy was our best quarterback in 2022, which I do agree to, then why did it take 2, Lance and Jimmy getting injured before we even saw him on the field? So I have some doubts about Kyle evaluating QBs anymore. I mean, I've sort of gone down the list of, passing on Mahomes for Cousins, passing on Brady to keep Jimmy after we lost the Super Bowl and allowing Brady to go to the Bucs where he won a Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure we would have won 2 if Brady had come here. Missing on Stafford. Still like the Lance pick. I still think
he didn't miss on Stafford. He just didn't.
He didn't
miss on Stafford. He wanted Stafford. I just don't. The 49ers weren't going to be able to give the Lions what they wanted. The Lions wanted Jared Goff. That was part of why they made that trade. Brad Holmes.
Now we can see why.
Yeah, and he's been great for them. So
Yeah.
I don't think he missed out on Stafford. He wanted Stafford, and if he would have had the opportunity, then he would have taken Stafford over Garoppolo. But yeah, I mean, again, not evaluating quarterbacks in that first draft. I understand. I've gotten in conversations about this as well. I understand that. Like, it sucks. It's hard as a fan to be like, you didn't even evaluate Patrick Mahomes. Like, you didn't even think to look at him. Like, that sucks. But
even Deshaun Watson in the same draft, I was pretty
right.
high on him after being with Bama and the Natty.
But yeah, so and again, I see some of these comments.
Another one too.
Kali talking about Randall Cunningham being better than Joe. Again, I'm not saying that Trey Lance is better than Brock Purdy because he is physically more gifted. What we're saying is, if you are more physically gifted, your ceiling could be higher. And it would be nice to try and see if he could get there rather than just punting and saying Brock was great in 8 games. And so we're moving forward with him. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, Randall Cunningham wasn't better than Joe Montana. But I would also argue that Joe Montana is more physically gifted than Brock Purdy. So there is that as well.
There you go, 100%. I'm just kind of catching up here with the chat. They're on fire here. Pterodome was asking if if Purdy had won the Super Bowl, would we still want to see Trey get more chances? I mean,
no,
probably not.
And I will fully admit that, but that didn't happen.
No,
you can't say he should have. It didn't happen. If it did happen, obviously you don't have this conversation, and Trey Lance is gone. Like that's obvious, but that didn't happen. And so because that didn't happen, you still need to now evaluate what you have in Trey Lance because of what you gave up for him. I am fully aware of the sunk cost fallacy. And if Trey Lance had played more than 3.5 games and still wasn't good enough, then by all means, I'm like, yeah, sunk cost fallacy. You made a mistake, move on. But you can't even evaluate him fully in because he hasn't played enough. And so, and that is obviously that's part of the argument, is that he hasn't played enough football to even expect him to be good. And that might be true. I'm not saying that it's not. All I'm saying is I would like to see them evaluate him on more than what he has been able to be evaluated on thus far before making that decision to move on from him. That is all I'm saying.
There you go. Pterodome saying it was not an open competition last year. The job was Trey Lance's, and Jimmy G was an 8-year vet. Do y'all read the story? You just skim through it.
No one claimed that it was a competition last year. I'm not sure why.
But here's the deal. They're all up in arms that it wasn't a competition last year, and clearly it sounds like maybe we got the wrong QB starting week 1. Well, let's do it again this year then, guys. Let's not have a competition, and let's just start Purdy, and what if it was Trey Lance? And then we end up shipping him off and find out on another team that he's a great quarterback. How are you going to feel then? It's not. You can't do that. You got to know what you got before we move on. And I just don't think
a Super Bowl win is suffice to say that Brock is good in the context of having only played 8 games. And it's not even saying that Brock is good. It's just simply saying if you win the Super Bowl in the NFL, you can't go the next year and that player doesn't get to start. So, and the other thing is if they win the Super Bowl, that means that he's not coming off a UCL injury either, which is again part of the conversation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. BP is years ahead in development. I'm glad Trey knows he has work to do. Yeah, Purdy had 48 starts in college. Lance only had 17. So Purdy has a huge leg up over 3 times as many starts.
And in Division I and in the Big 12. And he got the opportunity to play at places like Oklahoma and Texas. And all of that is correct. Brock Purdy developmentally is ahead of Trey Lance. No one is going to argue that he isn't. But Brock Purdy is not the guy that you traded 3 first-round picks for. Brock Purdy is not the guy that you handpicked. They fell ass backwards into Brock Purdy, if we're being perfectly honest. So again, the advantage that you have now is we can evaluate Trey Lance knowing that we have Brock Purdy in our back pocket. And if Trey Lance doesn't work out, it's not back to the drawing board. That's what I'm saying. You're not going back to the drawing board if Trey Lance doesn't work out, because you've got Brock Purdy. But you still need to evaluate whether or not you should move on. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Tear there is no other team that has what we have, and that's why I discount what Jimmy did last year and I discount what Brock did last year a little bit because of all these things you're listing. We carried Jimmy, and Brock carried us a little bit more than Jimmy did, but he still overall got carried by the same group of great talent. So
I also don't understand. I don't understand that comment. I don't know what we're saying that. I just don't. Tar, if you want to kind of clarify what you're trying to say there, because Trey Lance is on that team, yes, but has he played with all of those players? No, he hasn't. So again, Brock Purdy has played with all those players and has proven to be good with all those players, but Trey Lance hasn't played with all those players. So again, if you're trying to evaluate Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy, again, there isn't even a fair way to do that right now based on their individual experiences.
Yeah, we need some apples to apples, folks. We need to see some similar situations so that we can draw inferences and make, analyze the situation properly. Kali says he agrees with that. People are talking about betting money. No need to bet money. If you do, use a escrow site. Make sure that you get your money. Don't just take somebody's random word off Twitter or YouTube or whatnot. Purdy saved Kyle's job. I don't think Kyle was in much danger of losing his job, but he definitely helped to keep it from getting warm. That's for sure. Teradome saying Kyle Young, they act like it's a team out there called the Washington 49ers or something.
Again, I'm not sure what the point
I don't know either. They're rambling at this point. And we've been going here about an hour and 20 minutes. It's been great. We've had awesome audience interaction. If everybody could be sure and hit like and subscribe, that would be really awesome. But I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you're on summer break, but that doesn't mean I can just hog your whole afternoon here, Brian, either. So
yeah, I gotta go break in a new slow pitch bat. That's my afternoon plans.
Hey, this is important stuff. We all got to do what we got to do for sure. They're saying if Lance wins the Super Bowl, y'all still hating on Lance? No, no one's going to hate on him. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are some people that hate Lance no matter what he does. They have a different agenda. It has nothing to do with football, but I can't do much about that. Teradome thinks we need therapy. Hey, therapy is good for everybody, I say. So doing shows is kind of like therapy. We get to talk it out, get a little back and forth, get checked by the audience. It's all good. Purdy learned our system with the season. That's tough to do with no practice.
I'm not frustrated, man. Nothing. I'm just trying to understand the argument, because I appreciate, arguments, right? I mean, people put their opinion forward and you argue it based on its merit. I'm just trying to understand like I said, trying to understand the point or where it's coming from, so that I craft my response accordingly.
Here's what Teradome was saying, because people are saying Trey may go somewhere else and become a big star, and that's why we're afraid.
I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be tougher somewhere else than here. I mean, this is about as good a setup as you can get for a quarterback. But the thing is that Trey needs that now while he's raw, but once he gains experience, theoretically he should be able to carry a team himself. So he shouldn't need all those weapons. And it kind of, the timing could be perfect. By the time Trey can carry our team, he'll have to, because we'll have to pay him, type of thing. So it could happen somewhere else with less weapons. It just might take a little bit longer, or it might, yeah. But ultimately, I think Trey will reach his ceiling wherever he goes eventually, as long as he can stay healthy. Because high character guys tend to reach their ceilings. That's sort of the way it works.
And that's the other thing is again, it's not fear. I'm not afraid that he's going to go somewhere else. I'm saying worst case scenario is you don't give him an opportunity to compete. You don't evaluate him fully. You do get rid of him in the offseason, and then he goes somewhere and he becomes the kind of guy that you thought that he would be when you drafted him. And now as a front office and a coaching staff, you kind of look like idiots right now. If that happens, but also Brock Purdy balls out and continues to, and he's fine, then it's not as big a deal. But again, it's all about the amount of information that you have right now. And I don't think that you have enough information to determine which guy should be the one moving forward until you give Trey Lance another opportunity to start regular season games. That's all I'm saying.
Bobline Sports says, so if you say Trey needs real game action and loses a QB competition in camp, are you satisfied that he's been properly evaluated?
Certainly. If he loses a quarterback competition in camp, then by all means, obviously not the guy that we think he is.
I would just say not yet. I think he could still get there. It's just, it may not be here.
Right.
It'll probably end up being somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, you got to be able to beat Sam Darnold out. And maybe Purdy too, if he's ready by then. So that'll be the big question. Talking about the driver and the golf bag. Trey's fingers fine. Yeah, I think we've kind of been through most of this stuff. What do you think, Brian? Any other burning desires you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover today? I mean, I felt like we got to most of the.
I'm just ready for camp to start.
Me too. I'll be there.
Camp to start. Yeah, I'm gonna try and be there at least once. Is my hope, but
nice.
But we'll see. Well, yeah,
can't wait to shake your hand. Then that'll be fun.
Yes. Are you going to every one?
I mean, 725 onward. Okay. All the QB battles. Yeah, I want to be there for all of it. I really want to, impartial opinion. And I'm like, all right, do it yourself then, right? So
there you go.
I feel like a lot of the other people have agendas that they're pushing. Like I said, I prefer Lance, but that doesn't mean that I'll say that he's better than Darnold. If Darnold looks better, you'll hear it from me. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
What else? I think everybody else is. If he doesn't beat out Darnold, he doesn't.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
No argument here.
No doubt about it. I guess that's one other funny story. Did you see the Darnold seeing ghost story from when he was at Kittle's house? And apparently there was like some spooky closet or something. So like they're like, oh God, I think he must be just playing with the media at this point.
You got it. Well, but also
he had to know that this was going to happen when he says stuff like that.
You gotta.
Like he thought he saw some boogeyman or something.
I think when something that negative happens to you, the only way to really take away its power is to just lean into it. And so it sounds like he's doing that. So good for him.
I think he is. I think he's just playing with it. I do too.
Yeah.
Kittle probably told him to do it for all we know. Because Kittle's a master at stuff like that. There he goes. Only comparing Brock to Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, making the case. Now, some people were trying to compare Purdy to Montana and Young today. I was just like, just don't do that,
No, he's saying it looks like I think they're replying to Joseph Mahoney in the chat, who said they're saying they're talking about quarterbacks who had strong arms that didn't do anything, and then Mahoney came back with Mahomes, Brady, Montana, Wilson also throw deep, and how many rings do they have?
Yeah, I mean, a strong arm is not a guarantee of success. The NFL, tons of stories of strong arm quarterbacks who weren't good or weren't great. It's not the most important thing. Having limited arm doesn't mean you can't be great. Having limited height doesn't mean you can't be great. having limited top speed doesn't mean you can't be great, but when you got all three, it starts to get very difficult to sustain greatness, and that's my concern with Purdy. I just think we're going to need more than he can give, either this year or soon.
And I'm more than willing to say that I could be wrong about Brock Purdy, and I also could be wrong about Trey Lance. I have no problem with that. I'm not. Yeah. I don't care. I don't care which one starts. What I care about is making sure that my team that I root for, that gave up 3 first-round picks to draft a quarterback, doesn't move on from him too soon. That's all I'm saying. Like without a complete evaluation. Now, granted, that is my opinion that they haven't had a complete evaluation. Obviously, I'm the one talking and saying it. But that's all I'm saying. If Brock comes back and picks up where he left off and the offense is scoring 33 points plus a game, by all means, see you later, Trey. Like, I hope nothing but the best for you. But I don't see that happening coming back from a UCL injury, especially if it's rushed and he's starting week 1. So again, use this time to evaluate the guy that you picked 3 overall in the first 4 games and then move forward with whoever you feel like you need to move forward with.
No doubt about it. Sounds good. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
As always. This was fun. You started to talk for me, and like I think 9 times out of 10 you can. And I'm the type of person where I'll be sure and speak up if I have a disagreement, and you are too. So that's why we get along so well. But I had a lot of fun, and let's do it again when we have some more stuff to talk about. Maybe after camp, maybe preseason, before the season, whatever the case may be.
Sounds good. Otherwise, and like I said, hope to see you out there.
No doubt, I'll be there as much as we're in town from the 25th onward. And then, thanks to everybody who showed up in the audience. We had a lot of great participation, very spirited. Just remember, guys, we're all Niners fans, and none of us knows for sure what's going to happen. These are just opinions, and we appreciate you guys sharing yours with us, keeping us in check. Bottom Line Sports says, "Good show, go Cowboys." Oh no,
boo.
Boo. But good news for Cowboys. You know, you guys aren't really that high on my list anymore. Seahawks and Eagles have overtaken you guys. So for what it's worth. But I'm sure we'll see the Cowboys in the playoffs again this year too. They seem to have done good things.
Well, we see them. We'll see them in Santa Clara.
Yeah, we'll send them home, again. Week 5. Week 5.
Yeah.
That's true. That should be a tough one and a good one. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'll just say peace and go Niners.
Later.